Alrighty, welcome to my shop. I am Jeff. This is Jeff's workshop, and this is my annoying music that's playing here. And I need to mute myself and move this over so I can see what's going on here in my comments. Okay, once again, welcome to JR's Woodshop. If you're just a first time kind of checking this out, basically I'm just doing projects in my workshop right here, usually what I'm making is sewing machine bases, but I do other things too occasionally. But um, but it's all kind of just regular woodworking stuff. So I'm doing things on the table saw and the bandsaw and using chisels and a CNC machine and all kinds of stuff. So, if you're interested in just kind of watching that kind of stuff, thanks for stopping by, checking it out. If you want to follow, subscribe, whatever, I actually stream on 3 different channels. I'm kind of hitting all this stuff now, but if you look down at the bottom down here, you'll see all the socials that I use. So I multi-stream, I guess, simulcast, whatever you want to call it, on Twitch, at JR's Woodshop, on Facebook, on my Facebook woodworking page. I have 2 pages on Facebook that I do. One's my woodworking page, so that is also JR's Woodshop. But I also have sewing machine bases. Yeah, so it's like facebook.com/sewing machine bases. And that's where I sell the stuff that I make. But anyway, go to JR's Woodshop on Facebook. You can find it there. If you're on YouTube, if you want to watch there, that is just look up Jeff Revell, Revell. Just put it in as all one word. You'll find it. And I actually keep a playlist of all the past live streams in there. This is episode 44. Good gosh, that's a lot of episodes. So this is 44. Usually the episodes last about 2 to 2.5 hours. It just depends on what I'm doing and how long I want to do it for. So, there's no strict time. I try to start everything Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 o'clock, with the exception of this Friday because I'll be out of town. Well, sort of. But I won't be doing my live stream on Friday, so you'll have to come back on Monday if you want to catch the next live stream. But for now, we're live, and I'll play a little catch up for what we were doing last episode. I've got all of the bases that I'm working on. I have 8 different bases that I'm working on. They are all finished with the construction portion of it, and now I'm into the finishing state. So let me grab one of these. This is what is this? This is this is oak. This is white oak. So this is a quarter sawn white oak base. It is all completely done. It is sanded. The edges have been rounded and smooth. Although I've got to do one more thing on here. I think I need to do one thing where I need to round over the edges on these handles. But anyway, pretty much done. All the construction's done. I've got a lid. It has a side compartment on this. There's a lid. There's a little carving right here on front. It's very decorative. It's kind of hard to see that, but you can sort of see it. There you go. But anyway, I get them to this state. So I've got all of these bases to this state. I've got several different types of wood. I have sapele, I have white oak, I have cherry, and I have maple. So 4 different types. And last week what I was doing was starting the finishing process. And I'm going to set this over here because I've got a couple of them. So the sapele, this is a small sapele base. This one doesn't have the side compartment. But anyway, the sapele got a couple of coats of, what did I put on here? Gotta look back there. Tung oil finish. So this is tung oil finish on sapele, which is really, it just kind of makes it pop, makes it look really pretty. Let me show you, I think I've got one right here. Hang on a second. All this leaning and grabbing and whatnot. There we go. So this is what the wood looks like prior to the tung oil finish. And it's not bad wood, but I like this because it when you put an oil-based finish on here like a tung oil, I could have used a Danish oil too, but anyway, it transforms it to look like this. These are the same, come from the same boards. So you can see how that really just enhances the look. It makes the wood just kind of shimmer and shine and has added vibrance and color. And so anyway, I like doing that for the sapele. To me, it just looks really nice. The white oak, which I'm going to go back and grab this one again. The white oak, I generally will use a different finish on those. Stack these out of the way. I generally use this stuff right here on the white oak. This is what we did last time. This is a gel stain, and this is a mahogany gel stain. So it's kind of got the consistency of like a pudding, but you put that on there. The difference between the mahogany gel stain and a regular wood stain is that the gel stain sits more on the surface of the wood instead of soaking in. So this is a very porous wood, and I just like the way it sits on the top. And so that one, just to give you a look, this is the finished stain. I love what it does with the carving in the front. But yeah, you can see. So that's basically the same wood species, one on top of the other. You can see how the color changes, and yeah, I kind of like it. It's one of my favorites. It's not a lot of fun to put on because it's messy. I mean, I will say that right now. Gel stain is kind of it's like I said, it's like pudding. It's gloopy. You have to kind of slather it on, and then you let it sit for a couple minutes, and then you have to like wipe it off. Depending on how much you wipe off, if you wipe it all off, you'll get a little bit of color and stain. If you leave a little bit more of the product on there, it darkens up a little bit, depending on the stain color, obviously. But anyway, that's what I like to use for white oak. I generally use the mahogany gel stain on white oak all the time. Today, I was going to do this off camera, but I didn't get to it. I was going to do a cherry. I've got a cherry base here. Let me go grab this. So this is cherry right here. It's very pretty. I love cherry. Cherry is one of my favorite species to work with. It's just beautiful. It's a dream. It's buttery smooth, and it looks great. Has great figure in it. So cherry is one of those that I was going to get to, but I did not get a chance to. So that's going to get done. This just gets a regular wood stain. This gets a Kona, because this is a tighter grain wood. It doesn't soak up the stain as much. So in order to get this to look dark, because I like this to have a dark color when it's done, I will use a Kona, which is really super dark, but it doesn't come out. The nice thing is this is a light colored wood, and the Kona underneath or on top of this, it kind of warms it up, so you get like a warm brown. It's really pretty. And so I'm going to do that today. That's an easier process than the gel. But then the other one, and this was what's in the title, this is maple. And this is the other one I need to get to today. This one is going to get a trace coat. Now, a trace coat is where I will hit this, because this is figured maple. It's not just a regular piece of maple. This is actually pretty figured in through here. It's hard to see, which is why we're going to do a trace coat. It's very hard to see the figure right now, but when I run in a trace coat over here, which is basically a dye stain, it is not the same as a wood stain, which is an oil base or whatever. This is a dye stain. I'll do the concentrated dye in alcohol. The alcohol is a carrier for the stain, kind of thins it out and allows me to apply it on here. That alcohol-based stain will go on here. The color will soak into the figure, and then what we will do is we'll sand off the top of it. And so the color just stays in the figure, not on the surface wood. And we'll probably do that a couple of times. I like the alcohol because the alcohol flashes off faster, so that you're just left with the color in the wood, and you can go on and sand it and do other things. So maybe what we'll do is we'll do a trace coat on here first and let that flash off. And while that is flashing off, I'll go ahead and move to the cherry base over here, and we'll do some staining on the cherry. Then I'll come back and sand off that trace coat. And I don't know if I'm going to need to do two. Sometimes you can do one, sometimes you need to do two. You can do as many trace coats as you want. it's just up to you. But basically all you're doing is you're putting it on, you're sanding it off. You're putting it on, you're sanding it off. Every time you put it on, it darkens that figure in the wood. And so you're left with just a beautiful piece of figured wood that has a lot of chatoyance, which means it kind of, as you move it, it changes and you see different things in the wood. It's just a cool process. So anyway, figured wood, trace coating, it's a great thing. I actually did another video on trace coating, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 episodes ago. So if you go back through my playlist on YouTube, you'll find it. It's in the title, trace coating. And I give some references in there in the description as to where you can find a lot more information. Charles Neal, who was a very, very knowledgeable woodworker, sadly passed away, but he's got a ton of videos on this stuff, and I have links to his stuff in the old video. So if you want to learn more about trace coating, please go look up that episode, because there's a lot of information in there and in the description as well. Before we do that though, talk about a cool thing that I got yesterday. Came downstairs in the morning and looked out my front door, and there was a box sitting there, and I was like, oh, okay. So somebody made a delivery early in the morning and I didn't know it. I looked out and it was actually a Father's Day present from my eldest son. He got me a new air compressor, and not just any air compressor though. It's kind of special. So if you're looking at this big giant red thing on here, this is not the air compressor that he got me. This is my old air compressor. This is a Porter cable. They call it like a pancake compressor because it's kind of flat and round. I think this is a 6-gallon compressor. So basically this big red tank on the bottom here holds 6 gallons of air, compressed air. This thing has served me okay, but it has 2 issues. One, the pressure check valve needs to be replaced, and that's what actually shuts this. So you turn it on, you get to a certain pressure, and then it automatically shuts off the motor so that you don't overpressure the tank, and then as your pressure drops, it's supposed to turn it back on. So anyway, that needs to be replaced, which is not a big deal. It's like a $10 part on Amazon, and there's YouTube videos on how to replace the pressure gauge on here and stuff. That's not a big deal. The other big problem with this thing is that this is stinking loud. I mean, I don't know what the decibel is on this, but I'm going to say that it's probably in the 80 to 90 decibel range. I mean, it's really loud. My kids, when I turn this on in the garage, they like run. You can hear this all over my house when I have it running in here. It's just loud and brappy. It's crazy loud. And so I had found these other compressors. There's a company called California Air Compressors that makes these really silent air compressors. I don't say silent, but they're much quieter. So I found those. Well, then I found that Harbor Freight actually makes a very similar compressor to the California compressors for like half the price, and they're super quiet and everything else. And I was like, told my kids, like, hey, that'd be a great Father's Day present. Well, my older son actually bought one for me, so that was very cool. But I'm going to demonstrate to you today what the difference is. And to do that, I have to do something on my computer here. So as I've mentioned before, I run a noise canceling software when I am live streaming, because it in general helps to keep things quieted down. What are all the boxes for? Oh, hey, I got a question on my Twitch. So the boxes, the bases, just to cover really quickly, these are for antique sewing machines, which I actually don't have anything to do with, but my wife does. And I'll show you real quick, just so you get caught up. For those who kind of pop in, everybody's like, that's a really nice box. What are you going to use it for? Well, these are for antique sewing machines. I have one here that I use as a measuring standard for me. So this is what that would look like. There is a huge community out there who collects, restores, and uses antique sewing machines. And this is one of those type machines. This is a Singer, and that's particularly the ones that I make my bases for, because they are the most popular and the ones that there are the most of. And so there you go. So when people say, oh, you need to find a niche, you know, a niche category to do projects in, that's mine. There's not a lot of people who make bases for these things, and there's a lot of people who need bases. So that's what I do. I make bases for them. And I do basically a couple different designs, like with a compartment, without a compartment, and with a carving in the front, without. So that's what I do those for. It has that. It's easier to show on this one. So this is a Singer logo on the front here, and with some decorative flourishes and stuff. And I carve those on my CNC machine. And yeah, so then I sell these on my Facebook page. I also have an Etsy page. There's a link to the Etsy I think in the description, or in my about info on Twitch. So you can see some of those. If you look at the sold items, you'll see a whole bunch of them. Anyway, that's what I make the most of. That's what generally, those are the items that I sell. All right, oh, getting back to this big giant beast of a thing. I've had this for years, and this Porter cable is just ridiculously loud, and it needs a new pressure switch. Basically, it gets up to above like 160, and then the pressure relief valve blows because it's doing what it's supposed to do, because it won't shut off. But anyway, I was going to show you what this sounds like. Normally you won't hear it, so I'm going to turn it on real quick. And my noise canceling software that I use, because I have an NVIDIA RTX card, a little techie for you there, but anyway, my NVIDIA card has software that you can use that does noise canceling. I use that all the time because I run tools in here and I don't want to blow your all's ears out. But I'm going to turn it off so you can hear this. So let me turn that off right now. And this is what my air compressor sounds like. Now, I don't know how well this will come through because I'm using a mic here, but that's ridiculously loud. I hope that came through. Let me know if you heard that. So that's my old compressor, and it needs some love, and it needs to go somewhere else. This is the compressor that my son got me, and it is a Harbor Freight tool, as I said. And you know, Harbor Freight is kind of, sometimes you'll find great things. Oh my gosh, stop it. Air coming out of there. So sometimes you'll get great tools out of Harbor Freight, sometimes not so much. This is a great tool. And now I will demonstrate the difference. I just plugged this in. So this is this one running. If I can get it to, oh, you know what? Hang on. I have to dump some air out. It also holds its air. So let me, sorry, I had to dump air because it won't turn on because it was full of air. But anyway, here's this one running. Hopefully you can hear that I can actually talk over the sound of this one. It's not nearly as loud as the other one. It's super efficient. It has a smaller tank, and this is only a 2-gallon tank. But honestly, I don't use, there you go, it's done, it filled up. I don't use that much air. I mean, I'm not running air tools all the time and stuff. I have some nailers and stuff that I use that are air tools. I use it with like with a spray hose or a spray nozzle like this to clean things off. So I'm not using a ton of air. So 2 gallons of air is perfect for me. But that silent motor, oh my God, that is so amazing. So anyway, this is an amazing little tool here. And yeah, you can plug in all of your different fittings here. It has brass fittings and great stuff. You can dial in how much pressure you want to come out. It has a regulator built in. It's just a really nice tool, and it's really quiet. So kudos to my son. I'm going to turn my noise canceling back on, by the way, just for other stuff that might pop up. So there we go. But anyway, hopefully you heard the difference between the two, because this is an amazing tool right here. I don't know what the price on this is, but let me see here. Let's do a little look up here. You know, I'm my own boss. I can do what I want. Let's see here. What we've got, the Fortress. It's called a Fortress. F-O-R-T-R-E. Fortress Ultra Quiet series. Ultra Quiet. 2 gallon. 2 gallon. And let's just do a search and see if I can find that. So they also sell these on Amazon. But this came from Harbor Freight. I'm trying to find this. There we go. Harbor Freight, 2 gallon, 135 PSI. I do not want to sign up for your mail list. And this is $160. So thank you, son. It's $160. The California Tools version, I think it's California Air Tools. Their version is $200 or something like that. $210 says on here. So they say compare to California Air Tools, and yeah, it's almost exactly like the California Air Tools. If you look at it, I mean, they may actually make both of them. Who knows? Because I'm sure this came from somewhere in China, because that's where most things from Harbor Freight come from. But it's awesome. Got a little instruction manual here. This is the 2 gallon model. They make a 1 gallon model also. They say portable. I mean, it's not like super light, but it's probably about 25 pounds or so. So it's not bad. Has a little wrap up here for the cord, and yeah, it's just a great little compressor. So if you're in the market for an air compressor, I mean, you can use these to fill up your tires, your bike tires, get an air hose, clean things off, whatever. They're fantastic. They're really handy to have around. This is not too huge. I have a cabinet that I stick this under, and it lives down there. So I'm going to get this out of the way now. But anyway, the sound difference is just, oh my God, just blows my mind. So that is so much happier. Small animals won't be fleeing the territory now when I actually turn my compressor on. And my kids as well. They would flee the area as well. So anyway, that's I just wanted to kind of catch up on that. That was really cool. So I got that and fired it up yesterday and super happy with that. I was going to get to those stuff, but I had so much to do. I also put a new smart home lock on my front door. So a little while back, I went on a trip and came home. My son picked me up at the airport and dropped me off, he and his girlfriend, and they dropped me at the house. And I got there, they took off, and I didn't have my house key, and I had to sit there and wait for someone else to come home. I sat there for like an hour and a half waiting for somebody to come home. I didn't have a key. Well, I put a smart lock on my door now. So now if I have my phone, I can unlock my door. You can also use a key, but it's really cool. It's made by August, and it's their Gen 4. And it's super simple to install if you have the right door lock. And yeah, so that's really fun, and I can tell Alexa to open my door if I need to, or unlock it, and it tells me if it's locked or unlocked and all that good stuff. So it's very cool. So if you're looking to do some home automation stuff, the door lock, kind of a cool way to go. All right, let's go ahead and jump into some finishing here, because, you know, it's a wood shop. Let's do some wood shoppy stuff. So I'm going to go over and grab something out of my cabinet here. I've got a cabinet where I keep my wood stains and such. And I'm going to get a cup. So hang on just a moment. I did not have this stuff prepared. And I also need some alcohol here. So these are the things that we will need to go further. And I will share these with you. I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to turn my side camera on here so I can give you a close-up view of what we've got here. I've got all of my stuff down at my feet here, so I can't really get situated. All right, let me make sure that camera's on. It is on. All right, so the dye that I use is, I'm using Trans Tint. So this is a kind of a dark brown. It's called Mission Brown. This is a very dark brown dye stain. The thing about dye stains is they are highly concentrated, and you reduce them down to use. You can use them in water. You can use them in alcohol. So I'm using denatured alcohol, just Home Depot. You know, you can get this stuff Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. This is clean strip stuff. I got a little cup. I'm going to put it in a cup. Generally, the nice thing about using the concentrated dyes is that it only takes a few drops. So this is pretty expensive. This thing is like 20 bucks, $21, I think. I got this at Woodcraft. You can buy them online at Amazon and other such places. But you're like, well, that's 21 bucks is a lot for a little bottle. This bottle will last me years because you only use a few drops at a time. You're not using a lot of product in here. So that's the beauty of this, is that it really just does not require a lot of stuff. Now I'm going to make some room, which means I need to put these finished bases out of the way. I'm just going to set them over here for a moment because I need to get a little bit of room here. I'm going to put the maple base over here for us to work on. And I'm going to set the cherry one aside for the moment. And that gives us a little bit of room. All right, so the way that I do this is I take the, let me get my key here. I take the alcohol and I put it into the cup. It's not a lot going on here. It's honestly so easy. Take the alcohol, pour it into the cup here. I need some more alcohol. Ooh. But this will last me forever. I don't know, I probably won't be able to get rid of all this. And then I'm going to just add a couple of drops of this stuff. 1, 2. I did 5 drops, you know, a little bit more. But that's not very much dye at all. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put gloves on. Now, I will tell you, if you're using dyes, you want to be wearing gloves because they will stain your fingers, and it takes a long time to get that stain off your fingers. So gloves are a good thing. So I've got just some regular gloves that I use for finishing and whatnot. And I'm going to get a couple of paper towels here because I'm going to mix this stuff up. It's just sitting in the dye right now and it's at the bottom. So I'm going to take, I don't know, just a little stick here, wipe any residue off of it, any fuzz or anything off of here. And I'm just going to stick this in and I'm just going to stir that dye up. All right. Now the thing about using this, because like I said, it's alcohol based, it does flash off pretty quickly. And that's why I prefer the alcohol. A lot of times, like if I'm doing, like I use this for guitars, like if I've got a figured maple top on a guitar, I will usually use water with the dye stain. First thing is you want to make sure that you have raised the grain. You do a water coat on a moist paper towel and you rub that over the top of the wood. It'll raise the grain up and then you can sand that down flat again. So if you're using water base, you want to make sure that you've already raised the grain and sanded it back down smooth. Alcohol does not raise the grain, so that's a good thing. But if I'm doing a guitar, I'll use water because it gives you more time to play with the color and move things around and do stuff, and it blends really nicely. The alcohol, because it does flash off quicker, does not always give you the opportunity to play with the colors as much. But because I'm not really playing with the color right now, I'm just using this as a wash coat. So I'm just equally applying it over the entire thing. There is no reason to use water. I will use the alcohol. All right, so I'm going to move things around. I'm going to move over to my little finishing station over here. So let's see, I think I have a camera. Let's see, is number 2? Well, 3 probably is. What do you think? 3? I got 3 and I've got 2. What do you think? Yeah, we'll go with number 2 for right now. Number 2 for the moment. And I actually have a little stand right here that has but screws in it, and I use that for setting these lids on so that it just keeps them raised up. I'm going to use that, and let's start with the lid here. We're just going to trace coat this. I can use paper towels. I can also, I'll tell you what, I have these little towels that are kind of a fiber-based towel. So they're not as, they don't fall apart as quickly as like a paper towel would when it gets wet. And I like using them. So I'm going to get this and I'm going to cut this. So it looks like this, and I'm just going to cut this in half. I don't need to use the entire thing right now. So I'm just going to cut this in half so I can make a pad for spreading that color. So I'll just set this piece aside, and then we're just going to make a pad for this color. Set my scissors over here. And actually, let me get this gel stain out of the way. We're not going to need that. All right, so that's out of the way. And all I'm doing is I'm folding this up, and we're gonna just make a little pad out of this to dip into, probably like that. We're just gonna dip this into that stain. So let me grab the stain over here. And hey, good morning, Mini Pins. How you doing? I said mini pins, but it's min pins. So just people popping in over on Twitch. And I actually get more interaction from people on Twitch than I do any other. I get people watching any other platforms, but Twitch folks just seem to be more interactive. I kind of like that. I think that's a thing. Anyway, we're going to rub this onto here and start adding this. I may actually add a couple more drops to this just to get it a little darker. But we'll see. We may do a second, we'll probably do a second coat, second trace coat on here. Let me move this out of the way real quick. We're doing the lid here, and like I said, the trace coat, its whole job is to make the figure really stand out and pop. Now this lid is super figured, so you can see that on here. There's a lot of figure on this lid, but I'm just gonna hit all the edges, and all we're doing is we're just getting that dye into the wood. And so you really want to be even with your wood here, because the alcohol flashes so fast that it'll be hard to smooth things out if you don't move quickly. But this is not a problem. I've got a lot of material soaked in here. Anyway, ripening it on, we're going to let this dry. But you can see how that figure in here just really starts to pop and look really nice. So we will get this all done, and I'm going to set this off to the side here, and we're going to let that just dry, let that alcohol flash off, and we'll move over to the actual base here. So my plan, for those of you who've jumped in a little late, is to do this. This is flash coating, or not flash coating, but trace coating. We're doing a trace coating on the figured maple, and just added a couple more drops of this Mission Brown to this just to make it a little bit darker. This is really concentrated stuff. But the trace coat soaks into the maple. It soaks into the wood much better than, say, a stain does, because it's a really thin carrier base for it. And so it soaks in really well and gets the figure in the maple to pop, which is what we're looking for, as we want that figure to pop. And then we will go and sand off all of this material, and it's just going to leave that color behind in the figure. It's not going to show up in the just hit a little bit in there. It's not going to show up in the surface areas, because we're going to sand those off. And because figured maple is basically a lot of end grain mixed with straight grain. And you can see this is already drying. Look how fast that's drying off there. It's really easy to just leave behind the stain in the areas where you want it to be and have that figure. I mean, I like the maple. Maple's a light colored wood, and I like for it to just kind of stay light colored. But I also want that figure to pop, and this is the best way to get that figure to pop. I'm just going to hit the edges here. I'm not going to worry about the bottom here because I really don't care about that. It's plywood. So I'm not trying to pop the color on the plywood, just trying to pop the figure on this maple. So just running this across. Now it's not super dramatic necessarily in this stage of things. And especially as this stuff dries, it doesn't really look all that fantastic. But the magic kind of happens once you've finished all of this, and then you apply like a layer of shellac over top of it. The shellac actually helps to seal in your color so that it isn't reactivated by any other thing you put on top of it. Like if I use a lacquer has solvents in it, and the solvents might reactivate that color and kind of make it spread around and do stuff. We don't want that to happen, so we would use shellac over top to seal this thing in. Shellac is amazing like that, and it's a natural finish. It's made from beetle wings or something like that. I can't remember. Look it up, shellac. But it's easy. I use this a rattle can, just spray it on there. But shellac makes the figure also just really pop. So we will definitely give this a shellacking. But this looks good. I mean, I'm doing it on all the corners and everything just so I can get color to match. And that's okay. But really what I'm looking for is the wood to pop. And if it doesn't pop on the inside here very much, I mean, that's okay too, because this is the inside. Not as critical as the outside areas, but anyway, let me just put some color in this base here just so that it doesn't look weird. But yeah, my trace coat definitely belongs to this inside area here where the figure is from the maple, not in the wooden blocks and stuff. But, you know, we're here, so we might as well color those as well. This stuff is already drying off. I don't know if you can see, but there's like light splotches and such now. That's where this, like up here, all of this is flashing off. And I may actually hit these again while I'm here before we set this aside, and then we will move on to the cherry, because there we go. That's a nice darker coating now. When we get this to completely flash off, we're going to go over to my workbench and sand this down. But for right now, we're going to get all this color in here. Basically what I'll do is I'm going to apply this last bit to the sides. And this is our trace coat. And then once the trace coat is done, we're just going to let it sit, let it dry. That's why I use the alcohol, because it dries faster. Once it's dry, we will sand. And I'm only going to be sanding with like a 220 just to take off this top coat here of stuff. All right, I'm going to set this aside. And we are good. I'm going to put this on, hang on a second. I've got a little base here for the moment. This has nails in it that hold it up off the ground. Even though the bottom isn't really that much, there was a little bit on the edge. I need to straighten that out. I don't like that. There we go. Just make sure this is even. There we go. All right, set that aside. We're just going to move this whole thing over. I'm going to set it down on the base here. Okay, and down here I actually have some painting pyramids. See, this thing is actually already dry, pretty much. Wherever the figure is, like I said, that figure, the dark part of the figure is end grain, so it soaks up more of the moisture, so it takes a little bit longer for that to dry. Yeah, maple is awesome. Somebody just commented they love the way that maple looks when it's stained. The lid is a two-piece, so let me show you. It's a book matched. So I try to, when I'm making lids like this, I usually don't have wood that's that wide that I can make in the lids. I try to do a book match when possible, just because, well, let's face it, it looks cool. So I try to do a book match when I can. Now, sometimes I don't, like in this example that I'm going to pull over here and work on. This is just a single piece, but I thought it had a really cool pattern. It's got a nice, it's a flat sawn, so it has a nice cathedral pattern in there. So I thought that looked pretty nice for a lid. But I do like to use a quarter sawn, or not quarter sawn. I do like to use a book match. For those of you who don't know what book matching is, you take a piece of wood, you split it right down the middle, usually on my bandsaw, you flip it open like this, and then you have kind of matching patterns from the grain that you glue those together, and then that gives you a nice symmetrical pattern that runs down from the middle out. So that's book matching, and it's like opening a book. There you go. So that's book matched, and I do like the look of book match. It's very cool. All right, so now what we're going to do while we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to move on to this cherry one. And for the cherry, I just use, I use Varathane or Rust-Oleum. It's their 3X wood stain, premium wood stain. Varathane and Rust-Oleum are basically the exact same stuff. So if you ever are trying to figure out what to buy, it doesn't matter. They're both the same. If you look on the back, and there it is, Rust-Oleum. So they're basically made by Rust-Oleum. I think at one point in time they were separate companies, but they have since, Rust-Oleum has purchased Varathane, and they are the same company. All right, I'm looking for my little key thing that I use to lift lids. There it is, right here. And let's open this up. I'm gonna get a brush to apply this. I've got these little brushes that I use. They're foam brushes. I just find that it's easier to apply with a foam brush. Let's go back over to, let's try this camera for a while. We'll use that camera. Anyway, I use these little foam brushes that you can get at, I don't know, craft stores, dollar stores, Walmarts. You can order them on Amazon. You know, they're just little foam cheapy paintbrushes, but these things are great. I like them because these are not too wide. This is like 1.5 inches wide, but it has a chiseled edge, which is nice for doing boxes and things like that, because you can really get in the corners and get the stain in where it needs to go. So much easier than using a towel or something like that, I find anyway. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna get some paper towels here, and because when I'm done, I need to wipe all this stuff off. So I'm just gonna prep my paper towels first. It just makes life easier if I prep before I start doing this. I usually use the blue Scott paper towels, the shop towels. I like those a lot, but for whatever reason, I could not find any right now. I guess a lot of people are detailing their cars and stuff. They're usually found in like the automotive section of like Walmart and stuff, but I couldn't find any. And I didn't want to have to run to the auto parts store to see if they had them. They're probably more expensive there too. All right, I've got my Varathane. This stuff is really dark, but I just apply it. It's just regular stain that I apply. I don't know if I like that one, or how's this one right here look? That's good. I'm gonna just zoom this out a little bit. Let me zoom out just a little bit for you. Whoop, that's the opposite of out. There we go. Sorry, that was a rough zoom. A rough zoom. There we go. Much better. But the nice thing about this is I just brush it on, wipe it off. It's pretty easy to do. There's not a lot to this, but does really great things on cherry. I went through a lot of different stain colors before I found this stuff to use on cherry. And like I said, the cherry, because the cherry has that kind of a very blonde, almost a yellowish tone to it, it really makes this Kona stain kind of warm up. So the Kona color on top of that cherry wood, it's just a really nice combination. Anyway, all I'm doing, just putting it on there, kind of going with the grain there. Doesn't make a lot of difference, but I will do the sides as well, and then once I wipe this off, then I'll flip it over and do the other side, the other long side. So I'll do the short sides first. One long side, two short sides. Just kind of flip it, paint it, put it on there. All I'm doing is getting color on the wood. It's not a really hard thing to do, which is why I like using this stuff. Although that's gonna, that was. So yeah, shop space is at a premium for me, so I double up my surfaces. So this is actually my router table. If you haven't seen me routing on here, this is my router table that I use as a finishing table as well. I just put cardboard on top and it works pretty well for me. All right, I'm gonna get my paper towels here and start wiping this down. Actually, what I'm going to do is grab another piece of cardboard. I'm just going to put this on the ground, and then I throw my dirty towels on top of there, and that way they don't stain my floor. But now all I'm going to do is just kind of remove the color off of here that was on the surface. So you can see there's a lot of color coming off of there. But I'm left behind with just some really rich, beautiful wood color on that cherry, which is what I am after. Just trying to get the bulk of this stuff off. Just turn your towels so that they'll get loaded up and then they don't act real well. So you just need to kind of flip your towels and get some clean surfaces. So I'm going to get the bulk of this off, and then I'll come back and clean them up with some other towels after the fact. But I'm just trying to get the bulk of the stain off here. You can leave this stuff set longer. It's up to like 5 minutes, I think. But I'd never found the need for that. Like I said, usually a minute or two, which is about the time it takes for me to do a couple of sides and then go back to where I started, and then it's ready for action. And I just find that particular amount of time on this wood just looks perfect. I don't do things like color. People are like, oh, can you make one this color, that color? I don't do that. You get the color I pick for a couple of reasons. One, I'm colorblind. So if you're not familiar, like most people who are colorblind, it's not that we can't see colors. It's just that we don't see color the same way you do. And the colors kind of get mixed up and confused in our heads. So that is not good. I'm going to switch cameras because I'm shaking this camera. I'm shaking it a lot because it's actually attached to my table saw. So I just looked over and saw that it was like all shaky and vibrating, which I don't want anybody to throw up because they're watching this. But anyway, I'm kind of colorblind. I'm what's called red, green, brown colorblind. There's actually a more complicated name for it, but that's all you need to know. So I just kind of picked the colors that look nice to me, and this on cherry looks nice to me. So here's a contrast. Here's what we started with, and there's the color we finished with. So very different. So you can see, very different from this color right here. So it took me a while to find just one that gets it this nice rich brown color. And it has, like I said, the warmth of the cherry kind of comes through, and just, so it's not a cold brown, it's a warmer brown, and just looks good to me. It's what I like. All right, gonna do this last flat side here. And then we can start working on the bottom and the top and all that good stuff. So the insides. I usually take the low-hanging fruit, which is the sides, because they're the easiest to do. So yeah, low-hanging fruit. Get those done first, and then I move on to the more difficult parts. Some of the parts are a little difficult, like inside the storage compartments, because it's just not a lot of room to work there, and it's just a little bit more difficult to get your hand in there or to get the brush in there and stuff. So I usually go for the easy stuff first, and then the more challenging stuff. Just looking down at my maple right now, it seems to be drying pretty well. It's actually it's a beautiful day today. It's like 70s. We had a front come through and the weather's awesome and it's perfect temperature for doing finishing. It's like, I don't know what's the temperature in my shop, 70 degrees in here. I don't always, so here's the thing, for my personal projects, using cherry, what I like to use is, I'll actually grab it and show it to you. There it is. So for my personal projects, I love using stuff like this. This is Danish oil. This is a cherry Danish oil. So it has a little bit of color to it, not a lot, but it's a much more natural looking finish without the color. And that's what I use for my personal projects in cherry. Much like this is, what is this? This is tung oil finish that I put on this sapele, and it's a much more natural oil finish. And depending on the wood and who it's for, I will use an oil finish like this. And just to show you what just a regular oil finish can do, this is, I showed this earlier, but you may not have seen it. So this is sapele unfinished. This is sapele with the oil on it. Now this will actually get top coated once it's cured. This one right here, and well, both of them eventually, will get top coated with lacquer because that's my top coat of choice. But it adds a little bit of color, but the oils make the wood come alive. So that's what I use. Danish oil is one of my favorites to use. If I have walnut, I almost exclusively use natural Danish oil on walnut. I don't use any other, there's no reason to color walnut. Walnut is just beautiful in itself. So if I have an item that is walnut, I will use a natural Danish oil. And the oil itself just adds vibrance to the wood fibers. It just makes them kind of come alive, and you get a little bit of a chatoyance. You get just, I don't know, it just makes wood look fantastic. And so yeah, Danish oil is one of my favorites to use. So personal projects, I use the Danish oil for the cherry stuff, and it looks amazing. But because these are, okay, so these actually are replacements a lot of times, or reproductions of antique sewing machine bases. So let me show you something here. I've got a piece of one over here that I will be making a piece for in this, but for right now, I'll show it to you. This is a lid from an old base right here. So you can see that the color, I mean, they're not exact, but this color is kind of similar to the color in these old antique bases, right? So this is kind of what I'm going for when I do the cherry in this color, is to kind of replicate this color scheme, which is, you know, very predominant for that antique Singer sewing machine stuff. And since that's basically my clientele, people really love this. I have made them in other finishes, and these finishes sell first. So why fight it? You know, go ahead and just give the people what they want. So that's why I use this stain. And it took me a while to find this color combination. I tried a lot of different stains. I tried the walnuts and jatobas and all kinds of colors. This is what I ended up with, and it is my favorite on here, this Kona with the cherry. Now, this does not really work with other woods. I've tried this Kona color on some other wood species and just not nearly as satisfied as I am with it on cherry. So it's just kind of my magic color combination for that. But yeah, good question about, like, you know, do I use natural finishes? I try to use natural finishes where I think that, I have to have a piece of wood that really has good looking grain, a really nice natural look to it that will be enhanced by a natural finish. I've also used another product. There's an oil-based product. It's really nice because it has super low VOCs, which are the things that make stuff stink. But I use this stuff called Rubio Monocoat. So I'll show you this stuff right here. Where my camera at? So let me go over here. So this stuff right here is awesome. It's called Rubio Monocoat, and look it up. Go to YouTube and look up Rubio, R-U-B-I-O, Monocoat. This is actually created for doing floors, but people use it for, this is super popular for people who do wood slabs. People use this on walnut. It just makes the wood come alive. So go look up Rubio Monocoat and see. It's usually a two-part finish. There's usually a color and an oil part, so there's an A and a B portion to it that you mix together in a certain ratio, and then you apply it. And the nice thing is, all you do is you apply it with like a piece of plastic or whatever. You just kind of coat the wood, and then you wipe it off, you buff it, and you're done. It's amazing. But like I said, go look that up, Rubio Monocoat. I use that on some wood projects as well. You can get it colored and stuff, but I prefer the natural, especially on walnut. Oh my God, it looks amazing. So yeah, Rubio Monocoat's one of those that is very cool. I kind of found that watching YouTube videos, and there's a lot of places that will use those kind of like really easy oil coat finishes. And like I said, the Rubio, their main product was for hardwood floors. But people have started using it for doing like wood slabs and large wooden products. And it's a really durable finish, because obviously for floors, right? So it's a durable finish. It can be refreshed over time, which is really nice. And that's the nice thing about natural finishes as opposed to stained finishes. Natural finish, you can usually, depending on how it's top coated, you can usually apply a natural finish again. So that's the beautiful thing about Danish oil, right? Danish oil actually has a finish into it. You don't have to put a top coat on Danish oil because it actually has a varnish built in. And if you put like 3 or 4 coats of Danish oil on, and then over time, if you think it just needs another, you just hit it with another coat or 2 of Danish oil, let it dry, and you're good to go. That's the nice thing about like using like the tung oil finish or a teak oil finish or anything of those nature. You can always refresh your finish. With a stain finish, not so much, because you're usually, with a stain, you're putting a top coat on. And the top coat being polyurethane or lacquer or something along those lines. I do not like using poly. So poly is not one of those things that I personally use. I don't like the feel of polyurethane. I've used wipe-on poly. It's not too bad, but in general, I'm not a poly person. So I like lacquer. Lacquer is nice because lacquer has solvents built into it. So as you apply lacquer, usually spraying it, what happens is the solvents melt. If you've got like a second layer of lacquer, it melts the lacquer underneath and is kind of self-leveling. So you get a much smoother finish, as opposed to polyurethane that you have to put your coat on, let it dry, and then sand smooth before applying another coat. You do not have to do that with lacquer. Now, I usually will sand my final, between my last 2 coats just to smooth things out and get rid of any dust nits and things like that. But honestly, the nice thing about lacquer is that you don't have to sand between each coat, and it dries really quickly. So lacquer, you can spray a coat of lacquer and come back in 15 minutes and spray another coat. And because it has solvents in there, it melts through the top coat and levels things out. So you're getting layers of protection without all the sanding and stuff that goes into it. And to me, I don't use like a glossy, I use a semi-gloss. I don't like glossy finishes on wood. I prefer a semi-gloss because it just, to me, it looks more like hand-finished buffed wood as opposed to plastic. I don't like, glossy just looks plastic to me. Yeah, it's a personal preference, but that's the nice thing about me making my projects is that these are not special order, to order type things. These are just what I want them to be. So I put on the finishes I want on them. I put the top coats on that I think look best to me. And then if people like them, they can buy them. If they don't, they can look for another, which there's not a lot of people making these. So it puts me in a good position. All right, I'm just getting the bulk of all this stain out of here. That's the one thing about doing these inside parts is there's a lot of surface area, and so you have to kind of really work on getting all the stain out. Now, the beauty of this is that it's an inside area, so it's not really the part of the box or the base that's actually going to be seen because there'll be a sewing machine sitting in there. And you don't have to worry too much about, you know, getting it perfect, which when I'm actually creating these things and I'm putting them together and I'm choosing the wood and everything else, I'm looking at usually at the wood grain and such, because I try to get the most attractive part of the wood on the outside of the base. I mean, why would you put the prettiest face inside where it's never going to get seen, right? So I try to do that. And right now I'm just going around the horn here, so to speak, and getting as much of that stain out of these corners as possible. And then making sure that it's nice and smoothed out on these long flat surfaces. This, and then I'll come back to the bottom. Once again, this is just plywood in the bottom of these things, so you know, if it's not perfect, I don't really care. But that doesn't mean that I don't try to smooth it out a little bit. And the plywood actually ends up looking pretty good on the inside. So you can see there's the inside, the interior. Looks nice. This is the hard part. These little side storage compartments that I make, partially because I have large hands. So getting inside and working inside these areas is not always easy. But I just try to, this is where that chiseled brush tip really comes in handy, is getting in these little tight corners like this, which is one of the reasons I really prefer using these little craft foam brushes, because they do have that chiseled corner, chiseled front end that I can get into the corners more appropriately. Yeah. And if it's really just I can't get in the very corner, what I'll do is I'll just kind of push it in and squeeze out some stain, and it puddles up in there and spreads the color around. So, but I'm just slathering it around, and then I got to do the sides. But yeah, this is probably, to me, the most challenging portion of doing these things is this this part of the base, that little storage compartment. But I'll tell you what, I mean, as much of a pain in the rear as sometimes as these storage compartments can be, because like I have to make the lids for them and they're all custom fitted and everything else. This is probably one of the biggest selling points to these bases. If I have a base with a compartment and one without a compartment, and they're exactly the same in every other aspect, the one with the compartment sells first, hands down, every single time. So, The people want what the people want. All right, I'm gonna start wiping all this stuff out of here. Like I said, this stuff kind of goes on thick a little bit, so I just generally start with some towels and get the bulk of it out and then keep wiping. Alrighty. And flip the towels because I mean it soaks up a lot of material, so you do want to flip these over so that you're kind of working with fresh towel when you can. I don't bother with like cloth towels or whatever. Some people like, oh, I use old t-shirts and stuff. I mean, I guess I could, but I just find the paper towels are easier. They get filled up. I flip them over when they're just completely saturated or you know, I can't find a clean surface to work with anymore. Then I just toss them on the ground. I let the oil dry and I toss them away. You can't really, if you're using a towel, you can't really, or a piece of cloth, you can't really, you know, save it. You can't clean it. Once it's been stained and covered, you know, there's not much you can do with it anyway. So I just find the paper towels are the easier route to go for me. Now, getting the stuff out of these corners is kind of a pain in the butt. Not gonna lie. Kind of a pain. So let me see if I can get really clean area here. And now that I've got most of the bulk out, try to really soak up these corners. Corners and edges are probably the hardest parts with these. Like I said, this doesn't get, it's dark, so you know, you can't really see a lot of detail in here anyway. So that's why I'm just trying to really make sure that it's cleaned up to the point where it looks good. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it does look pretty good in there now. So these little corners, actually I've got a little knife right here. I'm just going to try to get these into the corners and clean those out as best I can here. There we go. That's actually pretty good. All right. Okay, so now what I need to do is do the top, and then we'll flip this over and do the bottom. And I still have the lid to do. So actually, you know what? Let me get our nice piece of maple moved over to the side here. And I'm going to use this as a stand that has little screws in there that I can rest the top on. Before I move on with the other parts, I'm going to go ahead and do this lid. I'm dropping stain all over the place. But let me do this lid real quick. And then I'll do the rest of the base. So hang on a second, I need to get some more paper towels laid out here. All right, and then we will wipe that one side off. Yeah, I think the lids I used for the cherry here are gonna look really nice because they have a really nice kind of a cathedral, they call it a cathedral pattern on it. It's when you flat saw the wood at the mill. And it makes this really pretty pattern on the wood. So it's basically like the big arches that you see on some wood grain. That's usually what they call flat sawn. And it's just the way they slice the wood. That looks pretty good. I need to flip and turn. Because after a while, you're just rubbing stain back in instead of removing it if you don't turn your towels. Just making sure it's not heavy in any area. This had a little knot area in there, so I need to get the stain out of that. But this is the underside, so that's okay. But that looks pretty good. What do you think? See? Kind of cool little pattern there. So now we'll do the other side real quick. And then I'll let this dry for a minute, and then I'll come back and do the edges. Or I'll do 2 edges and then come back and do the other 2 after it's dried up a little bit. because it's easier to hold right now by the edges. So I usually save those for last so I can get stain on here without getting it completely all over my fingers. I'm kind of doing this off camera almost, aren't I? Get a little lower here. Anyway, I'm gonna move my fingers out of the way here and get the stain there. And then what I'll do is I'll just come in here and do like this edge, and then I'll do this edge right here. All right, I'm gonna set this down, and then I'm gonna get a, this is why I have the little points here, because this has been finished. I don't wanna mess that up by setting it flat on the surface. So resting on those little points right there just keeps the airflow underneath and doesn't mar the surface by like setting it on a flat surface like this. All right, now I need to pick these up again, wipe this off. So after a minute, you kind of lose the ability to remove more because your towel is now soaked. So I have to keep flipping. Ugh. There we go. Okay, now we're getting the bulk of it off here. And yeah, let me just get a fresh towel. Be easier that way. And then get these ends wiped off, and I can come back and do these other two sides here. And I don't like do a lot of love on these ends because honestly the sides and stuff, it doesn't really matter as long as they're colored. It doesn't matter. You don't have to like wait a minute for that to set up on there. So let me get these really quickly. And actually what I'm going to do is hold this with a paper towel so I'm not getting any additional stain on here with my fingers. And we're just gonna clean up these edges with some stain. Just make sure I don't have any areas that are not stained because they would stand out a lot. And once that's applied, I'm not even gonna wait. I'm just gonna come back in because honestly, that's all it takes. It's just that little bit of time. And you can see that's a nice dark edge now. But this looks really good. I will set this on that little pedestal and let this kind of set up and dry. And then we will go and finish the rest of this base. Once we're done with that, we will move on to sanding that maple and getting that trace coat off of the top. Let me just make sure I got all the things. You do want to make sure you get all the stain off of here. If you leave any spots of stain that don't get rubbed off, they will not come off later. You want to do it before it dries, because once that stain dries, your only option is to sand, and that's no fun. All right, this, which will be resting on here like that, looks very awesome. But for now, we're just going to set it on here and let it dry. And what time is it here? 12:15, almost 12:15. Tell you what, I'm going to take like a 1-minute break here. Give me just a second. I'll be right back, and then we'll keep running here. If I can make my little timer go. Oh, adult kids, aren't they the best? Aren't they just super awesome? Mm-hmm. If you don't have them, you will one day, hopefully, and then you'll understand. I still have an adult kid living at home, so. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna finish this top here, and then we'll flip this sucker over to the bottom, and then we'll put this on some painter's pyramids and let it dry as we move on to our next portion of the maple base. This top part's a little easier. I just try to get stain into those corners of the supports here. I've got these little triangular pieces of wood resting in the corners that support the weight of the sewing machine. And so I just need to make sure that there is no unstained portion. I just use a little bit of the accumulated stain in the brush. I kind of squeeze it out into the corner and it fills in nicely. These corner pieces also are end grain, the part that's upright, and so they soak up a lot of stain. So usually getting them colored, not a problem. All right, just go around the horn here, get this all done. Once again, these chisel tips really nice for getting into this groove right here. This little rabbit groove that I cut for the lids, and just use the chisel tip to get fully into there and get it all stained. And that looks pretty good. I got one little spot there. I can't get there we go. Sometimes it's hard to get the stain to settle into the corners where you want it to be. All right, I'm going to look all around here just to make sure I didn't miss any little spots here. But it looks like I got full coverage there. And we can just start wiping this off. The other thing you want to make certain that you do when you do a top area like this is that the overhang from the brush, sometimes you'll get little drips or overhang where it stains down onto the side piece, and you really want to make sure that you get all of that cleaned off, because otherwise, like I said, when the stain dries fully, you will not be getting that off unless you're using sandpaper. So it's really good to make sure that you're thorough when you're wiping your stain, that you've got it off of all the edges where it could have dripped or come into contact. I'm going to try to get these little triangular pieces done here. There's not really a lot you can do here because it just soaks up so much, but that's okay. I don't care if they're super dark, which is what happens when they soak up, because they're it adds a nice shadow underneath the machine when it's sitting on there. All right, I need one more little clean section here. There we go. Now the other thing is, as you're doing this, you're getting stain all over your fingers too, so there's a high probability of putting stain back on your project when you didn't want to. So you have to be careful about that. All right, get the bulk of that stuff out of there. Because yeah, if you look, it's like if I run my fingers on here, look, that all comes off my fingers. Well, if you're putting that in contact with the base or the furniture or whatever you're doing, you're running a very high risk of reintroducing stain into an area where you've already wiped it off, and you may not know it. And until later on, and you go back to look at it and you're like, oh my God, where did that come from? Yeah. Ask me how I know that. Because it happens a lot. So I usually now when I'm staining, happened to me enough that I'm really particular about giving everything a once over before I move on to just setting it up to dry. I really try to give a really scrutinous look to the entire project to make sure that I have not left any stain marks behind that will come back to haunt me later. This is really thick in here. I need to get my little knife edge in here to get this rubbed out. There we go. There we go. And I'm just using this knife edge to really get any of the heavy stain out of these corners. right here. All right, come on. Okay, now I'm in a position where I can actually go back and look at the surfaces here. Yeah, see there's stain on the inside here that kind of ran down. And make sure that I get all of this stain off of here. And you can't always see it from one position, so you really have to move around your piece and look for any of that stain that might be in areas that looked okay from where you were standing or where you were looking before. But as you move around, you might see additional bits of stain in, like right here off of these edges and corners. Right here. Now this, I actually need to rub this down more. I'm gonna get another clean piece here and give these edges another once over. Okay. And then, like I said, I kind of go around these edges and make sure that none of this stain that I applied came off on the edge, because it'll leave a very dark line across that portion of the base that you do not want. All right, now I'm in a place where I can actually pick this up and look at it and just make sure that I'm getting it all off. I'm gonna get another clean one here just for touch-up purposes here. Right here, I could probably rub a little bit more off of that part. That looks pretty good. You're just looking for those little smudges and stuff that will ruin your project. Okay, I'm looking inside here. I can see some smudges in here. See, that's really heavy smudges inside there that I didn't see from where I was standing. Here's some in the bottom. So it also helps, like at this point in time, to use a clean cloth to hold your project, because you don't want to introduce any stain that might be on your gloves. But inside here, there's a whole bunch more just sitting on this inside edge that I did not see from where I was. So I'm really going to try to get all this cleaned out of here. Okay. And it's just a matter of like turning it in the light, making sure that the edges, that you don't have anything extra sitting here waiting to surprise you. Look at me. I'm a big thumbprint right in the middle of your project. All right, that looks good. The last thing I need to do is the bottom, which also pretty easy. With the exception of these little areas, I saved the handle areas for last. So once again, chisel tip to the rescue. I usually have to load up a little bit of extra stain that I can work into this rounded part. And then you'll get some drips. You have to be careful you don't get the drips going down there. All right, same thing over here. Get in there. There we go. But the brush is pretty nice because it will soak stuff back up too, because it's kind of like a sponge. So I just try to make sure I don't have any big glaring drips running down that edge before I can get to it. And then we just coat the living daylights out of this thing, because it's a big surface. So I usually load up the brush with quite a bit of stain. Oh my God, there goes my son, who basically was in bed like, I don't know, 5 minutes ago. He's so crazy. So crazy. I love him with all my heart, but he is crazy. I'm not even going to pull that millennial stuff. I'm just going to say he is his own creature. No doubt about it. I mean, he doesn't work until 1 in the afternoon, so his days are flipped upside down a little bit. from my schedule. So yes, he's usually up very late doing things and talking to friends, and I don't know, I guess his friends have this, maybe they're all on the West Coast, because he's always up playing with friends and stuff on his computer. And I'm like, dude, who are you playing with that is up this late? But I guess he has West Coast friends. So you should move to the West Coast, and then you could be on the same schedules then. But then I'd have to get up early. Yeah, so there you go. That's what I work with. All right, there is the bottom now all done. Like I said, just gonna make sure that none of this went over the edge to the point where I miss it on cleanup. But this is pretty much done. It takes a while to finish. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, finishing, I'm probably gonna rub stain in my eye. Finishing takes a while. It's just one of those processes that you can't get done quickly. You have to, it takes the time that it takes. And if you want your project to look right, you just gotta figure it's gonna be a while. But that's okay. I mean, this is where all the hard work that you put into something leading up to the finish, you know, this is where all that hard work pays off, because the finish is there to show off your hard work. So even though it's the part that I like the least, it's the part that is the most gratifying in the end, because it shows off all that hard work and it just, you know, makes it look good. All right, let's start getting the bulk of this stuff off of here. And I got to get those handles cleaned out. I really want to get, I mean, there's a lot of stain coming off of here, so we're going to get all this off. I mean, I probably don't even need to stain the bottom of this because it's the bottom. I mean, I could probably get away with not staining it, but I don't want to take the chance that it's going to, for whatever reason, it's going to stand out or whatever. So I just take the extra few minutes and put the stain on the bottom. And, you know, in the end, it does look good. All right, I need some more. I'm kind of excited to get to that maple and sand that stuff off. I might need to do another trace coat on there. I'm not sure. We will know once we sand, we'll know how effective that trace coat was. And that'll kind of give me an idea as to whether I need to apply another coat or if we can just move forward with a little bit of shellac in there. These edges done. And like I said, make sure you're getting along the sides here where that brush could have left some overhang and deposited a nice little stripe of stain along the edge, because that will not enhance your project at all. All right. And yeah, right along there some. And then just like before, I'm just gonna grab a clean towel and I'm gonna move this thing around and inspect it. Because see, here's a little bit right here. And I'm gonna grab another one. I go through some towels, there ain't no lie. Cheap paper towels, probably the best, because, you know, you will go through them. There's some more right here. There's another one of those really dark lines on there. Right here is a blotch that I missed. That would have looked ugly. And side. I mean, honestly, the biggest things that I'm looking for are these sides. I want these sides to be pretty flawless. And, you know, the top. Now this, not great. I'm gonna, there we go. All right, there is the finished piece. I'm gonna set this I'm going to trade places with the maple base and pull it back up here. Put this on those little spikes. Okay. All right, so that's done. I can actually set this down and close this up for now. I have another cherry base, but it needs to be sanded and such, so it's not ready for stain yet. But just resealing my stain here. But I do have another one that is ready to, that will need to be not restained, just need to be stained. So I'll pull this out again at some point in time. But what do we got right now? Well, right now we have our very cool maple that we need to deal with. Actually, start with this. We'll start with this little piece right here. I'm going to have to move this off to the side. So hang on a second. As I move this over, get rid of the computer here. Okay. I need a piece of 220 on my sander. And actually, I'm going to, it's a little trick. Kind of blow up like a balloon. I mean, gloves aren't cheap, so, you know, if you could take them off and save them and use them again later, you might as well, right? All right, I need to, let me get this stool out of the way. I need to get my extension cord here. I need to get my sanding stuff ready here to plug this in. Let's switch cameras up here so you know kind of where I am. I'm going to get my dust collection hooked up to the disc sander. Okay, and I don't know what I have on here. Hopefully this is 220. So 150. Definitely need a 220 on here. Where's a 220? Okay, I need to get another 220. Oh, I think it's right here. That one's nasty. All right, I'm going to get a new 220 over here out of my little supplies. Where's a 220? Right here. And okay. So our goal here is to, not sand down the finish on here, but to remove the top, just the top area of wood here, so that we're just leaving behind the figure right here. So let me go down here, get that kind of close for you all to see. I'm gonna go down just a little bit. There you go. All right, so I'm gonna take this, we're gonna hit it with the sandpaper. This is dry now. And let's see what we can get. I need my ears here. Okay. So just to give you an idea now, what we're kind of getting here. So this is with the trace coat on here, but not sanded, right? And you can see there's color across the whole thing. There's lighter and darker areas, but there's color across the whole thing. This way, this is sanded now, so you can see that now there's just color left in the figure area. And the figure actually is accentuated because it's now got a lot more contrast in there. There's lighter and darker areas, and so there's more contrast in there. And like I said, we can go back and actually trace coat this again if we wanted to. All right, let me get this side done. So this looks pretty much amazing. It's like I said, I don't know how easy it is for you to see this because it's one of those things where figured wood, in my opinion, just shows up better in person. You can see the chatoyance and stuff much better. But anyway, this looks amazing on here. This piece of wood right here, I was so pleased with this. This was actually an end of a board and it just had like tons and tons of figure in it. I was like, well, I got to use that for a lid, no doubt. So I ended up doing the book matching on this one and it turned out really nice. All right, now that lid is done, we're going to come back over here and we're going to grab this. This is going to take a little bit more work in sanding because I can't use my disc sander on the inside here really. So I'm going to have to hand sand some of these areas. But like I said, the important parts are the outside, and these will look pretty good. Just so you can get an idea of how much color we're removing there. You can see it right here. There's a definite heavy line of color right here. And then we're taking it down to this. Now, like I said, it's hard to see, but you can see that there's figure popping inside there. The front actually has a little bit more in the corners here. You can see all this figure out and through here. That's what you're trying to get to pop out, is that figure. And we're just taking all this top layer of color and we're leaving behind that color down in the wood so that it makes those figured areas just kind of contrast with the wood surrounding it. Okay, that's about all I can do with the disc sander here, and I have to move into some hand sanding because it's just in a spot where I can't get to it. Okay, I got 220 on here. I can't get that sander inside here. So I'm just gonna have to come in here and we're just gonna work some of that stain out of the corners here and stuff. I might need to come in here. I'm gonna just grab this little piece. I need something with a sharper edge, right in this edge right here, because it's some of these little corners in here. Just getting in those corners, it's a little difficult. So the bulk of it right here. And then I can work these edges too, which is nice because these also got that trace coat applied to them. And if I don't do this, I'll have a nice dark line there. So just use this to get that off of there. That looks really nice. And then I gotta work these edges, kind of get in the corners here. And yeah, it's nicer if you can trace coat something that doesn't have inside parts because, well, you know, it's just easier. But that's okay. This is not too bad. You know, in the grand scheme of things, not too bad. I just want to make sure that I'm getting all of the color, the heavier color, off of these little edges. I don't want them to stand out like that. These are for aesthetic purposes, well, and tactile purposes. So, all right, get this one done here. And then I'll have to go around this edge too with the hand sanding, just to make sure that I get those nice rounded edges back again. But this looks really nice. This is turning out well. The only problem is these are rounded, so I have to go back and get a square edge here to do some of these corners, which is not a big deal, but needs to be done because otherwise you'll have these weird kind of swooping areas of color, which not really matching the rest of the box. So, and then get into these little areas right here. Just get rid of some of that color in these very little edges. Like that. Okay, I think that got everything we wanted. Well, this edge right here needs some. A little bit right here. And a little bit right over here. And then I've got this area inside here, which is not the easiest to do. These short sides especially, not great fun. And it looks like I got some stain on there. Weird. That's okay. Once again, inside the storage compartment, it's okay. I'm gonna have to hand sand these little edges right here. But these don't have to be perfect. These are the parts that are seen, well, I won't say the least, but they don't get seen very often, so. Dark spot there, I'm not sure what that is. If I stain that on my glove or something, or I grab this thing? Anyway, all right, let me get the edges so they're not dark colored. And that may be all we're gonna do for the trace coating on here. I don't know that I'm gonna go back and do another trace coat. I've got pretty good contrast in here. And like I said, when you hit this with the shellac, and some people just use shellac on top of figured maple because it just looks so good. But I think that this trace coating adds a little bit of contrast to it. Just kind of makes it pop a little bit and just enhances that, what really is a kind of an anomaly and a whoops in the wood. But we like it as a decorative feature. All right, get this side. And then I'm going to need to clean this off again because it's got a lot of dust and such on there. So let's vacuum this puppy off here before we move on to any other step on here. Let me get my brush. All right. All right. I missed a spot. All right. One good thing from actually going in and cleaning is that you find when you miss places. So we did forget to do the bottom here. Like this. And these edges. Yes. But what I forgot was inside of these handles right here. So there's extra color in there that we do not need. So make sure we get that cleaned out. And then we'll go back and do the rest of the bottom here. Like I said, I didn't really do this part of it, but some of the material did run over the edges. And so that's what I'm cleaning up here, is this area that came over the edge here, just to kind of get rid of some of that color that washed over. Here. Definitely in the handle part right here. Come down here and get this. Okay. And on the edge of the handle right there. All right, that looks good. Let me just check this handle again over here. Make sure I got that edge right there. All right, vacuum it again. All right, and now what I need to do is hit this with some naphtha to clean all of that stuff off, get all that dust off of there. I do not want the dust when I go to hit it with a coat of, oh God, do I have shellac? Holy crud, that's what I forgot to look for. Okay, I do have enough shellac to hit it with a coat of shellac, maybe two. But for our purposes, we'll hit it with one coat of shellac just so you can see what it looks like. So let me get a paper towel here. I need a clean one. A couple of them maybe. We've got our naphtha here. We'll open that up. So right here's the naphtha. For you, if you weren't here last week, I use naphtha as a cleaning agent because it does a really nice job of cleaning off sawdust and such. It does not raise the grain, and it flashes off faster than using mineral spirits. But just to give you an idea, like what it'll look like, you can see that figure in there now. So it gives you a preview of what it'll look like when I spray the the shellac on here. But just get all the dirt and dust out of the corners, because like I said, we're gonna hit this thing with some shellac, and we just want to do the wood. We don't want to do dust. So we're going to get all that dust off. I think I need to sand that a little bit more. I'm going to sand that one area by hand. Although I think this is just heavier. I think this is just heavier area right there where there's some more figure. But I don't know. It just looks a little light to me. So I think I'm going to sand that just a little bit more. That's the other thing about using the naphtha or mineral spirits, is that it gives you a preview kind of what your wood will look like with at least some sort of a finish on there, whether it's an oil or whatever. And that can really give you some insight into maybe areas that you need to spend more time working on. Maybe you didn't get them sanded as well as you thought you did, or anything else. Like right here, if you look, okay, look at the base here, and they're both hit with equal parts of naphtha, but see how it's much darker right here? And I don't like that. I'm gonna clean this a little bit. Let me clean this brush off. I'll just hand sand this for a minute. I'm gonna clean off my 220, get a nice fresh edge on my 220. I'm just gonna hand sand this and see if that lightens this up a little bit. It could have just been that this was an area of much more figure, and that figure kind of soaks in more color. But we can also sand it up a little bit more, just remove a little bit more of that color out of there. And I think that's what our goal is. Just remove a little bit more. This is on the back also, so I'm not super worried about that. But I mean, I'm taking off a lot of material here. Let's go ahead and all right, so basically now what we've got is like a dark area right here, but that is from the naphtha because this is end grain. So it soaks into that area a little bit more. So what I'm gonna do is, do I still have air in here? I do have air in here. I actually have air in my canister here. So I'm gonna spray, oh, stop it. This stupid thing. I'm going to find my little air hose here. And I'm just going to hit these areas with some air just to, and you can see that really accelerates the drying of those areas. Find any other areas here. Usually the end grain areas are what take the longest to dry. So I will just hit those with this. All right. We're good. My lid is good and dry. Okay. Now that we've got this cleaned off, let me just make sure that that's clean. I'm not hitting the end grain, I'm just hitting the fronts of it. Okay, now that this is clean, I'm going to go put a coat of shellac on here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wander over here and get a little something I use for finishing. I don't normally finish over here. Usually I spray in a different part of my garage, but I think we can do this right here. I'll cover up my areas here so that I don't get any overspray. But this is a, for those who are in the need of something like this for finishing, I use one of these all the time for my projects. It's a Lazy Susan, right? Everybody knows Lazy Susan? So this Lazy Susan is an IKEA product, and I just have it covered in paper. So this allows me to put my objects down and turn them as I spray them. And that in turn, I'm going to shove this down inside here. Get this out of my way. I'm going to get another piece of cardboard. But anyway, what that allows me to do is just kind of keep my project moving and turning, and I don't have to like pick it up and set it down. So let me do this. I'm just protecting for overspray here. And I'm going to use painter's pyramids because I don't want it to actually set on the surface here, because I don't want it to actually like adhere to it if it has any left over on the bottom that kind of runs down. All right, I'm going to set these on the pyramids. And then as you can see, this allows me to be able to spray my stuff, turn, spray, turn, spray. You get the idea, right? Keep turning, keep spraying. And I'm going to set, well, I'll do this one separately. I'll do that separately. Let's see, is this a better camera angle right here for you all? Possibly. Possibly. All right, I have this stuff right here. This is called Zinsser's Bullseye Shellac, right? It's a traditional finisher and sealer, so you can use this as a sanding sealer, or you can use it. Basically, a sanding sealer means that once you've sanded, you put this in, and anything you put on top of that does not soak into the wood. This kind of seals the wood. But it also is, people have been using shellac as a finish for furniture and wood items for, I don't know how many years, hundreds of years, really. If you've ever heard of French polishing, which pieces dating back hundreds of years have been French polished, and it's a super high luster polish. It comes from using shellac, not in a spray can, but in a concentration, and it's a matter of polishing that coat after coat after coat after coat. And that's called French polishing. You can go look it up. I'm not going to explain it. But anyway, the French polish is basically a shellac process. Shellac and alcohol, I believe. So this is super easy to use. This is the clear stuff right here. So all I'm going to do is shake it up. It doesn't have a rattle in or anything. It's not a rattle can. It's just a can. But I'm just going to spray on light coat on this stuff. Typically, it's about 15 minutes for this stuff to fully cure. If you do a full thick coat, I'm just going to start with a light coat, like this. And it's a little sloppy there. There we go. And I'm just trying to hit the inside areas here. And then I'll do the outside. I do not want to get, hang on a second, I need just a paper towel right here. I need to cover up this corner of my shop stuff. There we go. Just really lightly hitting this. I don't need to completely coat. This is more of a dusting right now, for lack of a better word. Not putting a heavy coat on. I will come back and add coats to this. But this will actually let future coats adhere better. I don't know how many coats of this I usually do. It just depends. At least like 3 or 4. If this is an undercoat, which this is. This is an undercoat. not a top coat. So I will be top coating this with lacquer. Did I already do side? I did. But shellac, for some reason, just really makes wood figure just come alive. It brings out the what's called a chatoyance. And chatoyance is a word that woodworkers stole from the gemstone arena. There we go. That's all I'm gonna do for that. This stuff gets sticky too. It's kind of, but anyway. And chatoyance is the way that it shimmers and changes as the light changes on the object. You'll see different areas of figure just kind of popping out and moving. You can kind of see it in the camera there. You can see how it kind of shimmers and the grain kind of changes a little bit as you turn it around. So this was that back area. But yeah, so shellac really enhances that look along with the trace coating we've done. This is not a bold finish. Now, this is not like a super amount of color. This is a very understated finish in terms of the amount of color. You could go full color on this thing. That was not my intention. I enjoy the color of the maple, and that's the way I like to leave it. But I'm going to go ahead and hit this. I'm going to set this down here and hit the top here as well. So just for reference, I'm going to give you the reference shot here. Here is what this looks like, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and hit it with shellac, and we'll look at it again. And this also, the shellac is a little bit of an amber hue to it. So it does add a little bit of color, not a lot, just a little bit of color to it. And my finger stuck to the lid of the spray thing. Ah, there we go. But I'm going to bring this over so you can see. Let me change cameras here. So here is the shellacked side now. And that was just one coat. It gets better with more coats. That's before shellac. That's after shellac. So you can see that we didn't add any more color to it, but it just makes that figure really kind of pop when you add the shellac coat on here. Now, because this is heavily figured, it's going to soak in because remember that figure is, a lot of that is end grain mixed with straight flat grain. So it does do a lot of soaking in, so to speak. All right, I need to spray this again here. There we go. And then this also, at some point in time before I move to lacquer, this will get, this will also get a sanding. But yeah, I mean, that just makes that just pop and come alive. I love it. It looks great. The front looks good. I mean, this is not the most heavily figured piece of wood I've ever had, but it does have a lot of really nice, we call it flame maple, where it's really tight, thin lines. Some people call it tiger maple because it, you know, they say it reminds them of tiger stripes. But it's really, really pretty. And like I said, when you put the finish on, it just really captures the light and changes as you're moving around the piece or as the piece moves in the light. It's just, oh, so pretty. All right. You feel this is, I mean, I put a light coat on here, and honestly, it's dry to the touch now. I mean, I wouldn't sand it at this moment, but it is dry to the touch. I could actually go through, let me move this aside. I could go through and actually add another coat on top of here, and I think I will. And as I said, as I get to progressive coats, I will probably, after 3 coats of this, I would sand it. I would do a really light sand, and I'm talking like maybe 400 grit or 600 grit. All I'm looking to do is to knock off the dust nits and such. I'm not looking to do like a level flat sanding or anything on here. But I'm just building up. All I'm doing is building a layer of shellac on top of the wood to really seal everything in. And really make that figure pop. And that looks really nice. But yeah, some people just use shellac as a finish. They don't do anything else. They'll do numerous coats of shellac, and that is their entire finishing process. And I'm not one of those people who's done that. In fact, I won't even shellac the bottom of this. I'm just going to do the lacquer on the bottom. But for the sake of making this stuff pop, you can't go wrong with a good layer of shellac on it. It's just super nice. I'm going to move this back over, and I'm going to take a peek. Still a little wet on this side, but this side might be just a tiny bit tacky on there. But these first couple of coats, it's okay. Especially on the highly figured stuff, because it's trying to soak in to the pores. And so you've got face grain that doesn't soak in, and then you've got the pore side that soaks in a lot more. So you'll get these uneven finishes to start with, and then as you apply more and more, it kind of all evens and levels out. So, all right. Yeah, it's kind of funny because you'll see there's wet areas here and then there's dry areas, which you probably can't see that from the camera angle, but it's kind of wet over here and then dry here where it's soaked in more. But this looks really nice. I'm very pleased with the way that the finish turned out here. Like I said, I could have gone for another trace coat on here. I could have gone a darker trace coat on there as well. I could have added different color to it. I could have maybe added some, I've got some amber I could have added in there to kind of maybe warm things up a little bit more. My thought is that as I apply this shellac on here, there's enough amber in the shellac that it warms it up just a little bit. And I kind of prefer, and you've heard me say the word warm now probably a couple of times, I prefer it to look that way as opposed to cool. I'm gonna hit this one more time over here. And a little bit, because this is a flat surface, it's a little heavier on the lid because the material falls down and settles on top, as opposed to the side where it kind of, some of it hits and some of it falls down. Here it's all falling down on top of the lid there. So, but wow, that just looks amazing in the light. It's like, I don't know if you can see that, but that looks really cool. Now this is very glossy too. So you're like, ah, you don't like glossy finishes. I don't, but this is going to get sanded. And so some people will do it and then just hit it with like a 800 grit, and that mats it up just a little bit and they leave it like that. I'm going to be top coating this with a semi-gloss. So that in itself will, after I sand it, the semi-gloss will give it the much more natural look. It won't be as glossy as it is right now. But this looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. And hopefully the nice lady that I'm making this for will also enjoy this. This one's already spoken for. She saw me making it on the live stream and she's like, do you have anybody buying that? I said, not yet. She's like, well, you do now. So this one's already spoken for, which is nice. And it's kind of cool because, well, as she said, you know, it's not often you actually get to watch the thing you're buying being made. So, which is one of the reasons I do this stuff, so that people, if they're buying one of my pieces, can go back and watch my live stream as I'm actually creating and making the thing that they've purchased, which is a cool thing in my opinion. I think that's pretty neat. It's like, you know, what if you could, if you're buying a car and you can actually go watch your car being made from beginning to end, kind of thing, right? And you know, kind of holds me to a level too, because I can't cut corners. I'm doing it on screen, so I really can't cut corners. I got to do everything the right way. If I cheat on something, you'll see me. But I don't cheat. Not on my projects. These are my babies. But anyway, I'm not going to do any more. I'm going to let this set for about 15 minutes, and then I'm going to give it a really super light sand. I'll probably grab like a really fine mesh, like this is like a 320, but I'll probably go finer than that. I'll probably go like a 400 or an 800, and just give that a really fine sanding, and then hit it again, and that will help smooth things out. Get rid of the dust, because the thing is, you do accumulate like little dust nits and things like that, and you don't want them to build up too much, because then they're hard to remove. But I don't like have to do a really big sanding on here, just a really smooth light sanding, and then I'll spray another coat, probably another couple of coats. But that looks really, I mean, I'm very happy with the way this looks. So this will be the front of the base. This does not have the logo on there, but it does have some really pretty flamey, chatoyant stuff going on in there. And like I said, it's one of those things that it's hard to appreciate on camera. Just the lighting and everything doesn't do justice to how good this actually looks in person. And I think when I get all of these pieces put together, this is just going to be, I will take photos. This is already sold, but I'll take photos of it and post those on my woodshop page, and also my sewing machine base page, just to show it off, because it is very pretty. But then again, I feel that way about all the ones I make. I don't make any of them that I think are ugly. They just all have their own character and charm. But the ones, like if I'm making a maple base or something like that, let me get on so you can actually see me. If I'm making one out of like a figured maple or a walnut or something that really is more of an exotic piece of wood, I've done a couple of mahogany ones or whatever. They're premium for a reason, and it's not just because the wood's expensive, but because usually they have a level of aesthetic appeal that is above like oak or cherry or something. There's something usually a little bit more special about walnut or mahogany or flamed maple. Not necessarily just regular maple. Regular maple is nice, but it's not. Flame maple is where it really, comes into its own as a special piece. So anyway, I kind of cherish those pieces more, just because I really love some of the really cool stuff. I remember I made a base, and I found this piece of wood, and I didn't know it at the time. It was walnut, and I was like, oh cool, I'll make a walnut base, it'll look really awesome. But it was rough cut walnut. Well, as I actually ran it through the planer and knocked all the rough saw marks off, this beautiful figured walnut was underneath, and it was gorgeous. And you couldn't tell until you actually like planed the surface and got it cleaned off, and then it was just this beautiful piece of figured walnut. That price, that piece got a higher price than normal, because you pay for that up one level of aesthetic, right? So so I look for figured wood when I can. If it makes sense, I will use figured wood and try to make cool pieces out of them. But just the regular stuff looks cool too. Like this, the sapele with an oil finish. This stuff has a chatoyance to it. It kind of has a shine. You can see it right there. It's like it kind of shimmers and shines and just has its own special glow to it. This will also get a lacquer finish over top, which will even enhance that even more. But I just love just simple finishes like this on the right pieces of wood. I think this is awesome. If I stain this, it just wouldn't look the same to me. I think that staining it kind of downplays the beauty of the wood itself. So yeah, things like sapele, which are in my premium wood selection, because they're not your garden variety woods, right? You've got your oaks and your cherries and your maples and things like that. But then you've got some really different stuff. I had some sycamore, quarter sawn sycamore, that was just like really crazy cool stuff I made out of that. And so I look for wood that is, unique and not just, your garden variety boards. I try to find stuff that has really interesting grain in it. If I'm buying quarter sawn white oak, which I don't buy a lot of anymore, but if I am, I'm trying to find stuff that has really pronounced medullary rays in there so that it really enhances the look and stuff like that. And I probably due to go buy some more wood too. I'm looking at my wood pile down there, and I'm basically out. I think I've got one giant piece of walnut down there, so I might have to do a couple of walnut bases. Yeah, I've got that. I got some sycamore, and I've got some quarter sawn red oak in here. But I have no more cherry. My cherry's all gone. My maple's all gone. My sapelli's all gone. So it's about time for me to go back and visit my wood guy, maybe in the next couple of weeks. So anyhow, all right. It is, what time is it? It's 1:18. It's almost lunchtime for me. And I got some other stuff to do. I'm going to have to give this a little bit more time before I come back. And I mean, it's just a touch tacky right there. Yeah, just a touch tacky. So I'll come back in a few more minutes and sand that off and give it some more coats of love from the shellac can. And pretty much, hopefully by the time we come back on Monday, remember I won't be here Friday, but hopefully by the time I come back on Monday, I will have had a chance to finish the rest of these bases. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 more that need finishing. 4? Yeah, 4 more that need finishing in terms of they still need a final sanding, they need edge rounding, they need staining. And by the time you come back, the only thing that'll be left for me to do with these is to lacquer them. And I don't do that on camera because it's boring. So hopefully you didn't find this extremely boring. But I thought this was interesting enough to kind of share with you. I've done this, like I said, in the past, but I wanted to share this again, especially because somebody's buying the space and they wanted to see it done. So, but we might be starting some new projects on Monday. Maybe I will start milling up that walnut and maybe the sycamore I have over there. And we would do a couple different kind of exotic type, they're not super exotic, but you know, exotic for me type bases. We'll see what we can squeeze out of that remaining wood supply and start some new projects. I have some folks who want me to make them some 3/4 size bases, basically the same as this, just there's a group of machines that are 3/4 the size of the standard ones, and I have all the measurements to do those. I just need to make them smaller. So we might just do some of those just to satisfy some of those requests that I've had. I still have the 301 bases for sale. They haven't gone as quick as I was hoped, so I probably won't be making any more 301 bases for a while because they did not. If they had sold like this, I'd be like, oh yeah, we got to make more. But they're still sitting there, and so maybe the people are more desiring, more desiring of those. When, you know, maybe it's just them thinking, oh, I'd really love to have a base for my 301, but maybe they really don't. They're just saying that. So when it comes time to really buy, they're not really looking to buy as much as they're just dreaming about it. So, hey, thanks for Mini Pen stopping in. It is Min Pen. See, I keep saying Mini Pen, but it's Min Pen. Min Pens are awesome. I had full-size pens at one point in time, which is Doberman pinchers. Miniature pinchers, same thing, only smaller. Cool dogs, love it. I don't have any now. I wish I did. I actually have a Foxhound and a Great Dane right now, which are super awesome dogs as well. I'm a dog guy. But thank you for stopping in. I appreciate you being here. For everybody else who stopped in and spent the time, I appreciate it. If you, before you bomb out, if you could hit the follow, subscribe, like, whatever's appropriate, I would really appreciate it. Kind of does a thing for me. Otherwise, I will check back with you on Monday at 11 o'clock. So have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Take care.